next up for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to just walk through a couple of brief demos. Yesterday, I talked about some learning experience design concepts, and I talked about some of the things we can do in an imaginary world that's not too far away. And some of those were, the future of artificial intelligence, and not even necessarily the distant future, though some of it was. I'm going to go through those examples in my afternoon talk in more detail and show some more workplace specific kind of AI visions for the future. But what I want to do in the time this morning is spend a few minutes walking through some demo segments that we can do now. And these are sort of simpler things that capture still a lot of the concepts we've been talking about, learning by doing, and an active learning and some kind of coaching in a much more manageable way. They're things that you can build today, and they're things that in my case we have built today and have the rights to show, which is one of the reasons that I'm going to show them. So I'm going to walk you through just pieces of a few things. One is a very short learn by doing simulation, and this is a fairly simple version of the learn by doing simulation model. This is part of a customer service and sales course for people who are interested in a retail career. So these are people who tend to be at the beginning of their career. They're more often high school and community college students looking for a job. They can be people a little bit different stages of their career, different stage in life, who are looking to get into a retail job. It's a course created for the National Retail Federation Foundation, which is, or the NRF Foundation, which is the nonprofit arm of the National Retail Federation. The NRF is sort of the large retail organization. They sort of support the industry. So kind of as it was with PLI, the Practicing Law Institute, yesterday and this morning. If you're in the field, you know them. So if you're outside the field, you may not, but it turns out everyone in retail knows NRF. And so it was a pleasure to work with them. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit of a demonstration of a very sort of small simulation. So let's go ahead and show that, and then we'll talk a bit more about it.
Hello, can I help you find anything today?
I'm just looking. Thank you.
Sure, my name is James. Let me know if I can help you find anything.
I will, thanks.
Okay.
James, now I flip back just so you can see the earlier choices. Now I've got another situation where James is deciding what to do next. He is the salesperson, she is the customer. He made the mistake earlier of too quickly giving her too much information and not just asking what she wants. Kind of the same way that Ray needed to ask Jane what she is hoping for. So we should ask her if she's finding what she needs. So there's a generalization about open-ended questions, and that's probably not for this conference, but we'll think about that. So James is going to say, it's going to decide to ask her if she's finding what she needs.
Hi, I know you said earlier you were just looking. I wanted to check back in to see if I can answer any questions.
Actually, I'm looking for a gift for my mom, and she loves to garden, but I don't know anything about gardening.
I could definitely help. We have a great selection of gardening merchandise. Now, what type of garden does your mom have? Does she grow fruits and vegetables or flowers?
Mostly vegetables and herbs for cooking.
Okay. There are basic things like gloves and soil. Is that the type of gift you're thinking about? How about an herb drying rack? Tomato trellis? How about a garden tote? The gardening tote can be personalized with your mother's name on it. It's a very popular gift.
Those options all sound great. Thank you. Where's the garden tote?
The garden tote is on aisle 3.
So we saw language changed at the end, and she started to do a little bit better. So we saw a couple of things. This is a fairly, on the simple side of simulations, very much on the simple side, but it had some things. It was a realistic situation, filmed in a realistic location. This was, again, drawn from the types of interactions that real people in this kind of store have with real customers. The learner was asked to do something. So it was a fairly straightforward thing they were asked to do, but it was something that they did need to do. They weren't just answering a multiple choice question, even if there was, these really are multiple choice. There are 2 choices or 3 choices, but they weren't just asking a question out of context. They were deciding what to do. There was feedback from a coach. And in designing this kind of simulation, there are so many issues to go through, whether you want to do a more complex one or a simpler one, depends on time and budget and many other things. Here, the coach came up and for this particular audience, every time they did something, pointed out whether it was better, whether it was a good or a bad idea, and then the scene continued. So we did get feedback from the coaching component. One thing we don't get in this particular one, that's why there's a little asterisk next to us because it wasn't in this demo, is feedback from the environment. And that works really well in this type of situation. Again, depends on time and budget and a lot of other things, but we could have played this out, and if you've seen situations like this where Moira, had to, we saw her reaction a little bit more. So we could have seen, when James gives her information, we could have watched Moira walk away or just kind of give him a look that says, hey, don't overwhelm me. So there are things we could have done to expand this more in this particular case. This is sort of what's intended as a simple low budget simulation, but feedback from the environment is a tremendous help. As is coaching guidance, and this one also didn't have guidance, it had feedback. So if you were unsure what to do, it's a simple enough case you could take a reasonable guess, but there's an argument to be made for a coaching guidance section that helps you understand what to do in any kind of situation. So if you're wondering what should James do, that you might have somewhere to look for some advice, and sometimes that's a method that we've used and others have used as well. So one nice thing we saw is when there was feedback, even in sort of the simple low budget version, when there was feedback, it was never just that's right or that's wrong. There's always an explanation. Why is it? Can you help people abstract away and generalize the key principle even in something fairly straightforward and simple? So it's, this isn't really ideal because Moira already looks like, she's, getting a little bit bothered. This isn't really the right thing. She's wrinkling her face. That's an indicator. Or her nose, I suppose. All right. So I'm going to move on to another one. Time's going to go by quickly. This is a model called Watch, Rate, and Compare. This is a course for attorneys to help them better conduct interviews with pro bono clients. So this is another one with our friend Lish. This was also created for the Practicing Law Institute, the leading U.S. provider of continuing legal education. And we're going to go ahead and show this one, which is a scene with an attorney and a client. Different course than the one we saw before.
Okay, I've reviewed your paperwork, but I'd like to hear your story directly. So can you tell me what brought you in here in your own words?
Well, I want to work, but I can't anymore. I got hurt 5 years ago and haven't really been able to work since then. Now my wife works and I stay at home. It's frustrating. I'm still young enough to bring in a paycheck for my family, but I can't. Ever since the accident.
Now, the accident occurred while you were driving, but you weren't on the job, were you?
No, I wasn't in the bus. I was on my way to pick up my daughter from soccer. I'm an excellent driver, great with the bus. And that's so much harder than driving a car, Anyway, I was driving my car, had the green light, and another car came out of nowhere. Seriously, it wasn't my fault. That car just came out of nowhere and rammed right into the side of my car. Fortunately, I was on the way to pick up my daughter and didn't have anyone else with me. The driver of the other car left with no injuries at all. But now I have nerve damage. My neck and my back hurt so bad that I can't even sit for long, so I can't drive anymore. I try to look for other work, but I can't lift either. So I haven't been able to find another job the way I am now.
You said the accident occurred 5 years ago, but in the paperwork here, I see that it was actually 4 years ago. Is that correct?
I guess it was 4 years ago. 4 long years. Seems like a lifetime ago. I don't like to not be able to provide. I promised my wife I'd always take care of her, and look at me now. She's covering shifts on 2 jobs.
It goes on for a little bit, and I just want to kind of move to the next segment. Let me show you the compare part. So after this clip, what happens is you watch the clip and then you rate the attorney on how she did at the key components that the attorney had to key criteria that the attorney was supposed to follow. So this came in the context of a bigger course. How did she do at preventing distractions? She didn't, we rated her apparently as not that well at responding to distractions, asking follow-ups, and listening behaviors. So a lot of different things in that clip there, and then you compare your answers to those of others, and also get feedback from Lish, the attorney. So there's a lot in that one. Again, it's a realistic situation. You get feedback through peers ratings. You would compare when I rated her, you could also see that what the other people thought. So you would see, I said she did a bad job, but 80% of people said she did a good job. Feedback from a coach and expert, and and also feedback from peers' comments in some cases, and it wasn't in this model, but sometimes we'll be able to include peers' comments as well. And this actually does run as both a collaborative MOOC version and as a self-paced version. In the collaborative one, you can continue the discussion in the discussion forums. All right, so with that, what I'm going to do, and also feedback with an interaction with peers or a coach, there's more that we can do. So with that, what I'm actually going to do is wrap up a little bit. I have other demos that I can show, and I will get to at some point during the program, but I do want to move on to our next session. We have a couple more demos that I want to show. So where I last was talking about the watch, rate, and compare model that we saw. And so we've got a little bit of time that you can use to show a couple of additional demos, and then we'll go on to Julie's talk. One thing we talked about earlier was learning by doing. We showed a little bit of a simulation, and in the large scale AI learn by doing environment view that I have with the guy from Greece, and I'll show more of that later in my afternoon talk and some other things. There's so much more we can do with learning by doing and giving people the best experiences possible. What we saw earlier was a learn by doing simulation in a sales environment, which was a sort of a brief customer service and sales activity where you had sort of limited choices. The ideal version of that model would be you're speaking freely, right? Like, so you are the salesperson, the customer service person, it's really both. You're speaking freely, you get real answers to whatever you say, you get an appropriate response, you get appropriate coaching. Now that's beyond the world that we can live in right now, and beyond what natural language understanding can do. And we certainly wouldn't have a video of our customer Moira sitting in the store for every possible situation if it's done in video. Down the line, maybe it gets a step closer, and rather than pre-recorded videos, we're doing more with very realistic avatars, and avatars that behave in certain ways and feel realistic no matter what. So then James, the customer service salesperson, could ask whatever he wanted or say whatever he wanted. So there's all of that is part of the overall long-term view and vision of how those could be. And the AI coach is part of that as well, having somebody who's your mentor. Maddie and I were just talking about, what's freedom of choice versus what's the need for advice. And the same is true in a simulation, right? So in an ideal simulation, you are learning by doing, but you might want advice, and you can control that. Hey, I don't know what to do next. How do I handle the situation? I'm new at it. Somebody help me. Or some people say, no, you know what? I don't really want to hear anybody's view about what I should do. I just want to jump ahead, and I want to try to solve this problem. And both of those, those are equally legitimate. They are perfectly reasonable approaches. different people may approach things differently. Different people will do things in different contexts differently, and we want to support them all. And so by creating the right environments with that kind of flexibility, we put ourselves in a good position. And that's one of the things I love about the Learn by Doing model. I'm going to show you, having said that, move to an actually simpler Learn by Doing model, which is not social. This is a Learn by Doing model to handle a fairly simple but important task, maybe less so with the pandemic. And this is, I'm going to show you this in just one second. This is a Learn by Doing model where people learn to make change. So this is for retail students, people who are looking for a job in retail. It's usually students in high school or community colleges, or sometimes later in life, who are looking for a retail job. And one of the things they actually need to learn is how to make change when people pay them in cash. And this is something you need to do efficiently and accurately. You need to be fast. People don't want to stand around, and you need to be able to do this quickly. So this is jumping ahead a little bit, but you need to be able to do this quickly. So I'm going to show you this example in just a second of a little activity that helps you make change. And for people who pay by cash, which happens less and less in the pandemic days, what is it like? So we're going to show this example, and I'm going to show you, this has no sound, so I will talk over it. So let's watch a little bit. This is also for the NRF Foundation, part of the Rise Up program, the National Retail Federation. All right, so what we're seeing, and I'll pause for a second, is you're asked to calculate the amount of change needed for different purchases. So here we have a customer who gives you $10 for a toothbrush that's $4.75. All right, so it's $4.75. And how do you make the purchase? And this is not, by the way, just so you see what's happening, I'm making the change as the student. 520 is not yet the correct change. I am pulling from the cash drawer as the student and have to get the appropriate amount of change in the correct coin. So you want to use the fewest number of coins and bills. There's another challenge to this. It's not just that you want to get the amount right. So, I'm calculating that the amount should be $5.25. And I think the person in this video will get there. But it's also that you want to do it using the fewest coins and bills possible. So there's a challenge to this, and it's surprisingly hard in certain ways. It's incredibly hard, but and to do it quickly. So we're going to watch this finish. All right, and when you say you're done, you tell the machine that you're done. It says you did this right. So you actually got the right amount, but the nice job is a little bit generous because you didn't need to do it in as many coins and bills. So now what it's going to show you is, well, you could have done this instead of 2 dimes and a nickel. So it's 10 cents each for the dime, 5 for the nickel. You could have used a quarter. So you could have done this, a little bit differently. So we're going to move ahead on that. All right, and now we ask you to do it one more time and do it right. All right, so this time you did it using the fewest number of coins and bills. You had a $5 bill and a quarter, and that was it. Okay. All right, then you're given another one, so we want to see one more of these. It's a little bit more complex. We'll watch this one go through. So again, it's a nice little model, and it's a useful experience for people, and it gives them practice doing something that's realistic. And you don't quite get the feel of the money. There is a degree to which this isn't fully realistic, and could be a step better in some kind of virtual world. But in an online environment, you do it by clicking, and you do choose the right bills, and that's one of the key criteria and one of the key things that you need to learn. Okay, so moving back to the slides, this is, as I mentioned, created for the National Retail Federation Foundation, the NRF Foundation. Elizabeth is asking if this is built in Articulate, and this was built in Articulate Storyline. At my company, Kaleidoscope Learning, we do a lot of sort of higher end products on our own. We have our own platform that we use for sort of some of the higher end things. This was done in Storyline and worked out quite well. So this produced a SCORM file for an LMS, and so we were working within those limitations. So there's no AI in this, but it was in Storyline. So yes. All right, so I've seen the demonstration. Realistic practice, one of the key things here. This was, as realistic as you can get, I think, within this kind of environment. And it felt real to people. Again, you don't get the feel for the money. There's sort of, you don't get the muscle memory. Like we've used a couple of sports examples over the past couple of days. You don't, and not just me, you don't get the muscle memory of doing the activity. And that's something that, in an ideal simulation, you would be able to get at least, and you would get the touch too, right? I mean, if you really could do this the ideal right way, But given what we have, people are doing this online. They don't have, they don't have bills at home to do this. They don't set this up. You do get a lot of the realism that you want. And again, the learners are asked to do something. They're not, they're not just told this is how you make change. It's not here's just a little math problem. Sometimes we'll do this kind of thing where they'll even see a real customer come up in photo or video and not just say make change, but here's the customer. This person is purchasing, something that, a toothbrush for $4.75. You will see the person and the toothbrush, and it adds to their feel for it. But they have to do something. And so you're really doing the task. You're doing a task that is very much like the task that you're going to do in real life. And that's one of the other keys. You also get feedback from a coaching component. And this is another key element here. And the coach here isn't giving you all that much, but it does give you a little bit, right? So you're not just getting, this is right, this is wrong. You are getting, here's what is right or wrong about it, right? So the goals are make it accurate, doing the fewest number of bills. And arguably the time, which was not considered to be important enough to measure here. But you could easily imagine a model of this one that uses some kind of speed meter to tell you if you're doing it fast enough. And I'll actually show an example of something else like that a little bit later on as well. So there's something to that. Here the feedback though is it's not just you're right or wrong. It's, yeah, this was right accurately, this is correct, but you didn't do it in the fewest number of bills and coins. So you get more than that. If you did it incorrectly, you would get as much as the coach could understand about what you did incorrectly. So if you were making a common mistake, it might know, the coach would at least be built to know people often make the mistake where they, miscalculate and say 550 instead of 525. So if there's a reason you might do that, I don't think this example really was one for confusion, but there are some where there's an easy miscalculation that people make. The coach is prepared to do that as well. So that's another key piece. You also do get, you can get some feedback from the environment. So here, you saw when you pick a bill, it goes somewhere. It's not exactly the real environment, but you also saw that when you selected something, you saw that it was selected on the little screen. So not everything was 100% realistic, but when you took an action, it gave you some kind of feedback there as well. This isn't quite the kind of task where there's feedback from the actual real environment as there would be in something else, right? So in a social simulation like the Moira and James scenario, you might see in a version of that, if something doesn't go well, you'll see Moira being upset. You saw her, you saw something that James said and she wrinkled her nose. And you thought like, I don't, how do we handle that? So here you don't get that. But again, each of these are options that we have. We're not going to build them all for anything, but we are going to build them for different things. Last piece, and this one has, again, an asterisk next to it because it really was very much not included in this particular model, but I think it's important to always be aware of and think about coaching guidance. So here, this is a fairly straightforward task. So as a learner, as a retail person, as an aspiring retail worker or a new retail worker, you have a sense of how this is done. You've shopped before, you've seen people make change. Soon we will eventually, at some point we'll age out of the group will age out of people who've seen actual cash change that may happen sooner than we think, and then they will no longer need this activity, I suppose. But you do, you've seen this. You're not unfamiliar with the activity or what it means. So there's no coaching guidance component here. So there's no, when I need to make change, nobody to help you. Okay, I don't know what to do. What should I do? It's fairly clear. You're going to try to make the change. Calculate it. You should know math well enough to be able to do it in order to work in this job. That's kind of the background for the job. So that's where the point is. But often coaching guidance is really, really helpful to give someone an idea of, what do I do next? What should I be thinking about? What weighs into this decision in a learn by doing simulation? And it really just depends on the simulation. What is it that you're teaching, and what do you want to put together? And all of those are key factors that weigh into things. So kind of where we are on this demo. So I do have other demos to show you later, but I'm going to save at least one for this afternoon's closing session. I'm going to wrap up a little bit with the end of the demos that I had started before. So I walked through a few demos, and we saw them throughout the day, and I have one remaining to show in this set. So I'm going to sort of jump ahead to this one, and there we are. So this is an evaluation activity, and where kind of jump to a little bit. So this is an evaluation activity where it's designed for the Practicing Law Institute, which is a continuing legal education provider, the biggest legal education provider. They're based here in New York. And this is an activity where people watch a video of something fairly sophisticated and complex, and they comment on it. And it's been used in two ways. So this model has been used in a way where people make their comments and they're part of a MOOC like we saw with Alicia Aiken before, where people then comment and others can respond to their comments. So they might see a scene, wouldn't be Ray and Jane necessarily. In fact, they're not in that model in that course, but there is a similar model where it's a different legal situation and people comment on things that they say. Hey, you know, the attorney did a really good job of introducing herself to both of the clients, not just one of them. Oh, she didn't ask enough detailed questions here. So you make comments as you go. And in that model, in the collaborative model, people can comment on your comments, both the expert when she's around and others can debate you and say, oh, I thought that was pretty good. Well, I don't know. So that's a really useful version of this model. What we're going to see here is the self-paced version of the model, where you watch this video, make your comments, and then you will see after that the video playing again with your comments coming up and the experts coming up. So this is a situation from a course on behavioral ethics where attorneys have learned to confront some of their biases and try to make better decisions, not let their biases get in the way of their decision making. So I'm going to show you some of this video. I will probably stop it in a couple places to point out key things, but what you'll see is the perspective of a learner who's watching this video and making some comments as they go.
So far, so good. Irvin was a great witness, and I thought he came across as believable. Didn't you?
Well, yeah, things are going well, but I mean, we knew they would. It's hard not to feel good when you have a slam dunk confession.
Click the flag motivated reasoning, which is when they think that there's a problem, and where they think that there's been, I mean, a problem in the sense of the one of the people in the scene is acting in a way that's motivated reasoning rather than by their biases. So that's what's going on here. So we're going to watch a little bit more of this as the learner continues to make a comment about exactly what they think is going on.
From the defendant. The guy's clearly guilty.
You're not worried the jury could believe that ridiculous claim that the confession was coerced?
No, I'm not worried. The videotape speaks for itself. There's no way they believe the confession was coerced. But Irvin did help. Did you see the jury forewoman when Irvin said that the defendant called him on the night of the murder to help him manufacture an alibi? That's a classic cover-up. All we need to do now is finish up strong. Get to verdict, and we will win this thing, no problem.
Self-serving bias, and you can say anything you want. So this is in this example, the learner is really not given a lot of information, just saying what kind of bias it is, and not really explaining what happened. But it is something, and it is something of value. So that's what the learner is doing here, and we're going to let this play out, and then we'll see the comparison with the expert.
Carter's going to be really happy with this win, with the election so close.
Yeah, when I saw Carter earlier today, he seemed pretty jazzed that we had this one in the bag.
Hey, glad you're both here. We have a problem. A big one. I just found this.
What is it?
Apparently Irvin gave another statement to the police, one we didn't know about. I found it folded over in the back of the case file.
What are you talking about?
When the police re-interviewed Irvin, he told them he'd had a few beers the night he says the defendant called him asking for help with the alibi.
What? How did we not know about this?
I have no idea. We turned over all the requested statements to the defense, including the one Irvin originally gave to the police. Somehow this statement got overlooked, and Irvin never said anything to us about drinking the night he spoke to the defendant.
Do we need to turn this over to the defense? If we don't and they find out, you know they're going to scream that we withheld it.
Okay, hold on. We only need to turn over statements that are material. I don't think this is even going to matter to the jury. They have the defendant's confession, plus the other evidence on motive and opportunity that we presented, so Irvin's testimony isn't even critical. And plus, who cares if he drinks on occasion?
Okay, so now we've jumped ahead. We didn't watch the rest of the clip. We've got the point. So now we've jumped ahead to the next thing that happens, which is you see the or later thing that happens. You see a little bit of feedback from the expert, but then we also see the same clip with the information from the learner, from everything the learner entered, and then their ideas, the things that they thought that they saw, where they thought they saw bias, and then we see the expert with the expert's ideas popping up at the same time. So you'll see the experts in green and the learner's ideas in blue.
So far, so good. Irvin was a great witness, and I thought he came across as believable. Didn't you?
Well, yeah, things are going well, but I mean, we knew they would. It's hard not to feel good when you have a slam dunk confession from the defendant. The guy's clearly guilty.
You're not worried the jury could believe that ridiculous claim that the confession was coerced?
No, I'm not worried. The videotape speaks for itself. There's no way they believe the confession was coerced. But Irvin did help. Did you see the jury forewoman when Irvin said that the defendant called him on the night of the murder to help him manufacture an alibi? That's a classic cover-up. All we need to do now is finish up strong, get to verdict, and we will win this thing no problem. Carter's going to be really happy with this win, with the election so close.
Yeah, when I saw Carter earlier today, he seemed pretty jazzed that we had this one in the bag. Voters want victories by their DAs, especially in murder cases.
That's another little bit of an example, just to give us something else as we wrap up the day. It's an evaluation activity where, as you saw, the person who took this course in this demo version did kind of had some of the things right, kind of picked the biases mostly correctly, didn't really provide a lot of explanation. The experts picked some things that the learner wasn't able to come up with as well. So you can see how that model can work, and it's interesting when people get to comment on your comments. When you have a group setting, and then in the self-paced version, you're comparing with the experts in kind of a pop-up video way for those who've seen videos that do this. And it's kind of a nice, it's not a learn by doing model, but it's a model that gives you active, creative, critical thinking, and you really have to analyze what's going on of a realistic scene. So that was a scene with the attorneys on the prosecution side and talking about how they're going to handle the case, and some new evidence that had come up. So you saw kind of what that was about, was a realistic legal situation with those people. So gives us one more thing before we wrap up for the day, one more demo to think about, and some new ideas again that we can put into practice in lots of different ways. We're just going to wrap it up, I think, for us for the day. So I want to thank you for staying with us for another day of full of presentations, interviews, demos, and all sorts of things. And so thanks again for staying with us today. Looking forward to seeing everyone tomorrow morning, Eastern Time, 8 o'clock. Have a good night, wherever you are, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks again.